Thank you, Eric. It's our honor for you to be here. We realize that it is a sacrifice to make your way to New York City. Many of you from far-flung places. So we have met people here from San Francisco. We've met people from the Los Angeles area, and all points in between. And it's very important for New Yorkers to meet people from other places in the country. I don't know if you ever saw the New Yorker cover from 1974, where it's a map of America, but all the stuff of significance stops at the Hudson River, and then it's basically fly over country until you get to California. But that is not actually an accurate picture of New York City, because New York City is made up from the very first time that the Dutch settlers came right here to this very spot in Manhattan, which, by the way, I love our environs here in the financial district, because we are here at the tip of this island at the birthplace of America. When the Dutch settlers came here, all the way up until the present, the people who make New York great are immigrants. And the people that do great things in New York City take on New York City, bringing the diversity of the whole country here. And so thank you so much for coming. And we realize what a profound vote of confidence it is for you to send your children to a college in New York City. But we covenant with you that we are trying to do something that we think is not only of the greatest individual importance for your child, for your student, but as I'll say later on in my remarks today, I think it's something that is of historic importance for the Christian movement in our time. Several days ago, we had a very splendiferous meeting with our Board of Trustees at the King's College. And I was speaking to them. I opened the meeting with a devotional from the first few chapters of Deuteronomy. And I noted there that here we have this scene, if you can just picture it. Here is Moses. As you know, many of you know from your reading of the scripture, Moses is not going to be able to inherit the promised land. He is giving his final oration, his final sermon, which it was a long sermon, but he was reminding this next generation of the law that God had given to him on Mount Sinai. But he's not going to be able to go over. So this is his last shot. Now, what is the first thing that you would talk about if you had one last shot to talk to the coming generation about what they need to prioritize? What would be the first thing you would talk about? Well, many people would think that the first thing that he would think to talk about would be that they were free, that they had spent these 400 years in bondage to Egypt, and that they had been freed from slavery in Egypt and now were a free people. Moses doesn't talk about that first, although it was really important. Freedom is not the first thing that he talks about. Other people would say they're about ready to cross over from the plains of Moab into the promised land, and many people would think that he would go into great detail about the land flowing with milk and honey, the prosperity that is going to await them on the other side. And we definitely here at the King's College believe that prosperity is important. We believe in entrepreneurship and free enterprise. Moses doesn't talk about that first. As he begins his one last great oration to these people, what is the first thing that he talks about after he certifies the deep theological conviction? Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one God, and you shall love the Lord with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. What is the first thing he talks about? Education. He talks about education. He says, now, here's all that has gone before. You need to make sure that your children don't forget what makes us who we are. And that is the business that we are involved in here at the King's College. people, I've done a lot of interviews since I've started here at King's, and people say, what's the mission of the college? They always ask that, and it rolls right off my tongue, and I'll get to that in a second. But they say, what is your personal mission? And I always say, I feel it is incumbent upon me as a person. I know my entire faculty and administration and staff feels this way as well, to re-enchant a new generation of young people with the ideas, the animating ideas that made Western civilization in general and America in particular great. And we have to go back and, just like the children of Israel standing there on the plains of Moab getting ready to take the promised land, the first job is to make sure that the education is done right, it's excellent, and that it sinks down deep. So we understand profoundly that it's all about the students here at the King's College. And the fact that you are here and endorsing us with your presence today and visiting them and getting them nourished, making sure that they're nourished. We are greatly privileged to have you in our presence today. But here is the mission. I always, almost every meeting I start off with the faculty and the staff, or students or board of trustees, I go back to the Vince Lombardi approach at the beginning of every football season, holding up the pigskin and saying, this is a football. Take nothing for granted. So here's the mission of the King's College. Through its commitment to the truths of Christianity and a biblical worldview, the King's College seeks to transform society by preparing students for careers in which they will help to shape and eventually to lead strategic, public, and private institutions, and by supporting faculty members as they directly engage culture through writing and speaking directly on public issues. Now let me tell you something. It is not hard for me to get motivated to get up in the morning and come to work when you're serving that mission. And we are all involved in solidarity around delivering that mission to your students. And I want to talk just briefly to you today about what I think is the most remarkable imaginable, and I think a historic start to this academic year. The King's College is 75 years old. And here's the truth of the matter. There have been the arrows and slings of outrageous fortune in the entire history of the college. 75 years, September 19th, 1938. It is a miracle that this college is here and has that mission. And it is our job to make sure that we serve the miracle and do that well. So we have had an amazing start. As a new president, as you know, I started officially on August the 1st. And the number one thing that you want to know as a college president, and you're looking at the mission and you've been signed up for this task, is to say, what is the state of the faculty? What's the mood of the faculty? Who are you going to work with? Because the faculty are the day-to-day people that deliver on the promise of the mission. And you gain or lose your mission one hire at a time, one faculty member at a time. So in my first meetings with the faculty, as we got on the ground there and started talking, I came home and Kimberly, my wife, by the way, Kimberly, you're here, and I just want to introduce you to Kimberly Carmichael Thornbury, my wife. Who is a super genius as well, and I hope you get a chance to meet her today too. But Kimberly is a witness to this. I came home after that first day of the faculty, and I was just completely blown away. I mean, I knew of the King's College faculty, but to meet them in person, to see their conviction, to see their passion and enthusiasm for delivering this kind of education in New York City was astonishing. And I will say to you with full confidence right now, there is not a single member of this faculty that I don't have 100% confidence in. I don't know how many college presidents can say this, but at the end of that faculty retreat, we spent one day here and then went to Glen Cove and met up with student leaders for the Statesmanship Institute. and I addressed them both together. And at the end of that time of the faculty retreat, every single member of this faculty rose from their seats, came up unexpectedly. This wasn't on the program. They laid hands on me and Kimberly and prayed for us for half an hour. Now, I don't know, this doesn't happen other places. You have to understand that God is doing something amazing here. And then all of the faculty got together with the leaders of the houses. We all met together. I addressed them from Acts chapter 5 about the importance of Christian solidarity around our core values and convictions, that we not only need to be with each other, we need to be for one another. And it was a remarkable start to the year. And I'm going to hurry past through this next part of it. But the Lord has really given me a number of amazing opportunities since coming into this role to speak on behalf of the college. And I'll just mention a couple of these in passing. I did an interview with a reporter from Forbes magazine online. And a little quirky title here, the Book of Revelation is Hayakian. It's not a very sexy title, really. You wonder how many people are going to read this. And this reporter emailed me after this thing had launched, and he said, this was about 4 hours, and he said, this thing is already the most trafficked article I've ever had published on Forbes. And which is amazing, but I think it's because there's something special that God is doing through the group movement. And I would encourage you to go online and read that and look at that conversation. It was a fun one, but it's getting a lot of attention. The fact that we are connecting. There are let me put it this way. There are 4,000 institutions of higher education in the United States. Okay, around 4,000. Of those, 2,000 are private. Okay, of those 2,000 private institutions, there's between 600 and 700 that historically have had some kind of connection to a religious denomination or organization. Most of those have drifted. Of that 600 roughly, there's 100 that have some kind of explicitly Christ-centered mission statement. And there is only one traditional undergraduate Christian college in New York City with the kind of curriculum that we have, that's designed to inspire a new generation as to the ideals that keep a society free from tyranny. I think that's why these things are getting read and picked up. So there have been a number of other opportunities that I've had. And I'll skip past those relatively quickly. But I do want to stop here and pause and say, I was just asked by Stu Epperson with a group that was, we were up here talking, and he said, what would you say to parents of other, prospective students that would say, we want to, it doesn't matter whether or not your child goes to an institution with an explicitly Christ-centered mission statement. And what would you say to that? And I would say, go read this article by Patrick Seaworth, who is a transfer from Ohio State. And in this article, he describes his experience coming from Kings and saying, going from a context in which virtually everything that my tradition and my parents had certified was something of value was under daily assault at The Ohio State University. And to come to the King's College where you're invited to participate in that tradition and that it's affirmed and a place in which God is welcome in the classroom is a remarkable revolution for me in my life. It's called A Tale of Two Universities. So one of the things that I've been doing is I've been going out and speaking at various different places in the country, various different conferences in Louisville and Chicago. I published a book on my mentor, Carl F. H. Henry. I pause here just to mention him because Carl F. H. Henry was the founding brain of the evangelical movement. If Billy Graham was the heart, Carl Henry was the head. He was the founder of Christianity Today magazine. And Carl Henry, for decades, worked with Billy Graham to try to found a Christian university in New York City, and they failed. But we have an opportunity to do what those giants were never able to accomplish. And it's something for us to remember on a daily basis as we come to this place and do what we do. I want to mention this. We have some Tar Heels here. Who are the Tar Heels? Raise your hands. So we got a few Tar Heels in the room. Yes, okay, you're well represented. I was involved in the installation of Richard Land, who at Southern Evangelical Seminary in Charlotte. And we were on the platform. This is a very august event. Everybody's in their, academic regalia. The peacocks are all, strutting. It looks like Hogwarts, on stage. Hopefully not Hogwarts on ice. But I was seated next to Josh McDowell, who many of you will know. Some of the younger ones may not know Josh McDowell, but he was there. Well, actually, you probably will, because he still is maybe one of the most, if not the most popular youth conference speaker. And we're sitting up there. I did not get to see him beforehand. And he turns to me, and this is as the program is going on, and he's talking out loud. Now, if you know Josh McDowell, you know that he's very animated. So he's talking as the program's unfolding, and he's like, Greg Thornbury, you just went to the King's College in New York City, right? I was like, yeah, I'm trying to be quiet. Richard Land's talking. He's like, that is the greatest opportunity in Christian higher education today. And he said, I'm going to be telling everybody about what's happening there. And I'll be praying for you every day. Now, if Josh McDowell says it, I believe in that settles it. And so we're so grateful for him. We have, as I've been telling you, we have a world-class faculty. And they're a world-class faculty who've proved themselves in the public square. And let me point to a couple of recent additions here. Professor Paul Glatter, who came to us this year, he had done a very prestigious fellowship in Berlin last year. But previous to coming to the King's College in that prestigious fellowship, he was really one of the top writers for the Wall Street Journal. He's also worked with the Washington Post and with Forbes and Business Insider currently. As I've moved around the city, I've been at various different events, and it's kind of like, Paul Glatter's kind of like the Forrest Gump of New York City. I show up at all these things, and he's there, and everybody knows who he is. But my point would be this: if your child wants to go into media or journalism, don't you want people that have actually been a top writer at the Wall Street Journal? Aren't those the kinds of people you want your children to study with? That's possible here because we're in New York City. Okay, Wall Street Journal writers don't relocate, to typically out into the hinterlands. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But this puts your child in the path of people of significance, and that's Paul Glatter is doing amazing things, presenting a very prestigious lecture next week at Columbia University. Another addition that we have this year, Dan Seidel, who I've known for many years. He really is the top art historian in Christianity, in Christian circles today. He has been a friend of the college for some time. But we were able to work out a situation in which Dan Seidel is now coming to join the work of our faculty as a presidential scholar and art historian in residence. And when we made this announcement, 33 different newspapers picked up this announcement and ran it. So if your child is here, make sure they take Dan Seidel next semester for a class. He's kind of a big deal. And here's you can't even read this, unless you've got, Professor Brian Brenberg could, because of course, secretly he's Superman. But it's very tiny here. But there's not a week that goes by that our faculty are not prominent on CNBC or Fox News or CNN or the Huffington Post or the Wall Street Journal. So they're out in the popular media. So we have lots of media dons. I spent part of my graduate work at Oxford. There are media dons at Oxford, and then there are research dons at Oxford. And we've got both kinds here at the King's College. And, I joke, but I mean, you see all the lists of faculty publications here. Just let me highlight one, Joe LeConte. Joe LeConte has 2 books coming out in the next year. I joke, if you call to make an appointment with Dr. LeConte, they say, please hold while Dr. LeConte completes another book. So he's got 2 coming out next year, John Locke, one on John Locke, and one on C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien and their experience coming out of the First World War. That's a story that's never been told before, and we're so glad to have him there. Of course, Anthony Bradley, he's such a major superstar. And Alyssa Wilkinson, chief film critic for Christianity Today. I can't even begin to enumerate all of the different highlights of things that our faculty are doing. Dave Corbin and Matt Parks doing their Federalist papers. Liam Walker presenting papers at Yale, and David Tubbs publishing in First Things in the Public Discourse. Amazing stuff. I want to transition from kind of the academic speak to the heart and soul of the college. So not only is the tone and the temperature of what's happening in our worship services that we have, Refuge on campus, sparsely attended last year. I come in here on Thursday nights when it happens. They're packed out. And Drew Johnson and Eric Bennett have put together the King's Liturgy, which we're going to put together for parents as well. The whole campus is reading scripture together, praying together, fasting together. Again, I really don't know of many other places that could say the kinds of things about campus-wide solidarity. By the way, at the Student Fall Retreat, it was, they made a blanket frozen solidarity. It was very cold, and but we made it back alive to live the tale. 75th anniversary, again, when I came in, we had a 75th anniversary alumni event. They said that they were hoping that maybe we get 60 people to come to our alumni gathering at the near the old campus in Briarcliff Manor, New York, which is not there anymore. And we're kind of crossing our fingers, praying, Lord, send some people out. We had to shut registration down. Over 150 of our longtime alumni came back, and one of the most gratifying events of that for me was I had said something that was a little bit controversial at the time, which was some of the alumni feel like the campus was in Briarcliff Manor, and that was the only campus. But the founder of the King's College, I did some digging in the archives because I'm kind of, crouching tiger, hidden president. And I did some reading in the history of Percy Crawford, and I found out that the founder of the King's College back in 1938 originally wanted the King's College to be, and guess where? New York City. So I said this, and it was kind of like, how are they going to react to this? Bob Strayton, who was an associate of Percy Crawford and then his successor, Bob Cook, was in the quartets and everything, got up and said, Dr. Thornbury is 100% right. Percy wanted the college in New York City. But it wound up starting off in Belmar and then wound up in the Briarcliff campus. Our colors used to be purple. Now they're royal blue. There's the cake that we had there. And we have just had a string. One of the great things about being in New York City is you are in the path of the most awesome people on planet Earth continually. We don't have to fly people in like other colleges do. They come here and they say, can we come speak at the King's College? I'm going to be in town. So Jay Richards, who wrote the most insightful book on the origins of the financial crisis in 2008, did an evening event. How many people come out for an evening event? Lots of people. There were over 100 people here, our business and finance students, as well as many people from the Wall Street area. And it was kind of like, again, people saying, I did not know there's a college here, situated here, in the most obvious place in the world to study business and finance. with these kinds of convictions. So I saw Jay at dinner the next night, and he's like, this is amazing. I knew about Kings, but to see it up close and personal was amazing. David Kinnaman, from the president of Barna Research Group, came and talked about his book, You Lost Me, how to reconnect the faith to this generation of millennials, talked to our faculty and staff. David Bentley Hart, who is one of, if not the preeminent theologian taking on the new atheists in our time today, came and talked about his book, The Experience of God. For those of you that were there, you know that it was so high-minded and scholarly that a lot of people left the room, a lot of the adult people from the community that came say, I had no idea what he was talking about, but I'm glad he's on our side. But the students at the King's College were right there with him, paragraph for paragraph, and asked super intelligent questions. And then one more, Vernon Hill, this guy in the lower right-hand corner, an amazing guy, great entrepreneur, founded Commerce Bank here in New York City, and then sold it to TD Bank, was a huge success story, a great success story in modern banking, and then went to London and got the first charter for a bank in London since 1819. And he was here with our students, gave a talk, again, super intelligent questions, and he had lunch, and he loved Kings. And he was like, we were walking out to the car, and he said, I gotta tell you, I'm impressed. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, this is like going back to the 1930s and the 1940s. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, well, the students are all wearing bow ties, like clean cut, the no glassy stare, can speak in intelligent sentences and paragraphs. I'm like, well, welcome to the King's College. So that's the President's Forum series that we have going on. 500 students this fall, which is a really good place for us to be. We are at a very advantageous position moving forward into next year. Our admissions chief, Brian Parker, tells me that we have an all-time high number of applications to the college as of October 1st. So you keep praying it down and pray it through is what I want to say to you. So looking ahead, what do we want to say? What's job number 1 and 2 and 3 and so forth for the president? My job increasingly turns from being so internally focused on the campus, which I'm happy to do. I want to be as ubiquitous as possible, but not fall into the trap that Batman said of the Joker in the campy 1960s serial. He called the Joker the ubiquitous, iniquitous enigma. I just want to be ubiquitous, but not iniquitous. But I am turning outward now to look for donors and friends for the college, and can solicit your support in that sense. Focusing on the fall 2014 class, and as we grow, we have the happy challenge of meeting space and meeting needs. We've got searches going on for a new vice president of academic administration / provost, key additions to the faculty that we will need, and we are also looking long-term for a development officer, although we have a wonderful person helping with us now who is kind of the Mickey Mantle of development. Very exciting. Kings Online will be starting in the first quarter of next year. That will be an on-ramp for many students to get here to New York City. And we have many other different things, but the number one thing that we are all focused on is this last bullet point, which is the care and retention of current students to our campus. And here's where I would like to park the bus today. And before I get to that, I'll just say, make sure if you want to stay connected, Chad Abbott, who, by the way, has been maybe an unseen angel here. Chad, where are you? He was the one that was making sure the technology worked here in the few minutes before this. He's amazing, runs our social media amongst a number of things, and does an amazing job. Make sure that you're following King's College on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll get a lot of these stories that we are talking about. And you'll see a few selfies there on Instagram as well. Here's where I'd like to park the bus today. In the last week, there have been 2 articles that have come out from major religion news services in our country talking about a phenomenon that I think is now getting national attention, which is this. There is a spiritual renaissance happening in New York City as we speak, the likes of which have not been seen since Jeremiah Lanphier, a businessman, started prayer meetings in the Methodist Church down here on Wall Street when the stock market crashed. In 1857, he started with 40 people, and by the end of the revival, there were 10,000 people praying on a daily basis for New York. Folks, it is happening again. And in both of these stories, the spiritual renaissance in New York, guess who is being looked to as a galvanizing center of that movement? The King's College and our faculty. And so I think your child is here at a historic time. Historians in the future will be able to look back on it and call it a revival. But here's what I know. God's hand is upon not just kings, but countless churches and organizations. And here's what I want to say. It's Sinatra. If Christians can be seen as competing and thriving, not only surviving, but thriving in New York, if Christians can make it here, they can make it anywhere. So the King's College becomes an important symbol of hope. And, what I am the most impressed with as a new college president, I love the faculty, love my executive team, love Eric Bennett and everything he's doing with our students. But I'll tell you the most impressive thing about the King's College, and every donor that meets them and every trustee that knows about them will say, what makes King's College so amazing are the students. I've never met such a large group of young people that are this able to swim in this competitive environment as I have with the students that glide across this campus on a daily basis. And thank you for sending them to us. I was listening to an NPR, don't judge me, NPR interview week before last with a band that I like called Dale Earnhardt Jr. Any Dale Earnhardt Jr. fans in the room? Okay, I got one hesitating. Okay, thank you very much. I see that hand. Let's pray. They were asking this band, what's this new album about? And they said, it's about our generation. They said, well, what's the story of your generation? They said, failure to launch. And they said, well, what do you mean? So we're the generation who we're in our late 20s and early 30s, and, everything our parents' generation did, we haven't been able to do. So we can't figure out who we are, what we want to do when we grow up. We're kind of floundering about. We don't have careers. We don't own houses. We don't get married. We don't have children. We're kind of flotsam and jetsam. Those students don't come to the King's College. They come and they compete and they thrive and they show that we don't need to have a Chicken Little worldview. The sky is not falling. Jesus is Lord. So thank you for coming today and hearing me yammer on for all this time. But it is a high watermark for us to see parents and students in the same place at the same time in common cause for the mission and vision of the King's College. Thank you so much for coming today.